North Korea has fired what appears to have been several land-to-ship missiles off its east coast. It's the latest in a series of missile tests in defiance of international pressure to halt its weapons program. The launches come less than a week since the UN Security Council passed fresh sanctions against Pyongyang. The spokesperson for South Korea's defense ministry said the projectiles appeared to have been short-range cruise missiles which flew about 200 kilometers before falling into the sea. Seoul and Washington are currently analyzing the data. The isolated country has been conducting such tests at an unprecedented pace in an effort to develop an intercontinental ballistic missile capable of hitting the mainland United States. Under its leader, Kim Jong-un, it's also tested 2 nuclear bombs since the beginning of 2016.
According to a Pentagon memo seen by Reuters on Wednesday, the Pentagon has upgraded its assessment of its ability to defend the United States against incoming intercontinental ballistic missiles like the ones North Korea is attempting to develop after a successful May test. Instead of saying the US military's ground-based interceptor program had a limited defense capability, the Pentagon now said it had a demonstrated capability to defend the US homeland from a small number of intermediate-range or intercontinental missile threats with simple countermeasures.
Tensions between Germany and Turkey continue to worsen. Soon, these Tornado reconnaissance jets will no longer be taking off from a base in Turkey, Germany's NATO partner, but instead from Jordan, which is not a member of NATO. The approximately 260 German Bundeswehr personnel, 6 Tornado fighter jets and a refueling aircraft are to be moved to a different country. The decision by the German government follows a protracted dispute with Turkey over who can visit the Incirlik air base. Berlin insists German lawmakers must be allowed to visit Bundeswehr soldiers stationed there, as is the case anywhere else around the world where they may be deployed. It seems likely German troops will be transferred to Jordan, a move which will take time and cost money. A solution perhaps, but it's just one more strain in the troubled relationship between Germany and a key NATO ally.
The turmoil in the Middle East is continuing to escalate as Turkey has just approved a bill to send thousands of soldiers to Qatar. Of course, this follows Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and other Sunni Arab states breaking off relations with the pariah-turned-Gulf state. All Qatar's land borders are now closed, and as Saudi Arabia and the UAE were its biggest food suppliers, it's now looking for other countries to import food from. Just yesterday, the Turkish parliament passed legislation to deploy troops to its military base in Qatar in a show of support with its ally. Of course, Saudi Arabia is saying that if Qatar wants good relations with its neighbors, it must stop supporting Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood. According to Saudi Foreign Minister Adel Al-Jubeir, Qatar's continued financial and diplomatic support for these Islamist groups undermines the stability of the Palestinian Authority and Egypt. Now, Hamas is on the defensive, protesting that their only focus is the liberation of Jerusalem from Israel. Israel has not gotten involved in this conflict, but more pressure on Hamas can't be a bad thing from their perspective. Still, it's not all just about Qatar's support for Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood. Their closeness to Iran and their Al Jazeera satellite channel with its arguably pro-jihadi line are also unacceptable to most Sunni Arab states.
Iran's intelligence ministry has confirmed that 5 of the gunmen who carried out terrorist attacks in Tehran on Wednesday were Iranians who joined the Islamic State group in Iraq and Syria before returning last summer. 13 people died and over 40 people were injured in the twin attacks. All 6 assailants were killed by police. ISIL has claimed responsibility for the killings and threatened more violence against Iran's majority Shiite population.
The Iranian army's elite unit says Islamic State's involvement in twin attacks that killed 12 in the country's capital means that Saudi Arabia is linked to the terror acts.
This terrorist attack happened only a week after the meeting between the US President Donald Trump and the Saudi backward leaders who support terrorists. The fact that Islamic State has claimed responsibility proves that they were involved in the brutal attack.
Saudi Arabia's foreign minister denies any involvement, though, in the twin attacks. The
Secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council has blamed U.S. officials' visits to the region as the main cause of division among regional countries. Ali Shamkhani says that the region witnessed division and the strengthening of terrorist groups after these visits. He added that as a result, more weapons are being sold and the economic cycle of terrorism has been emboldened by the U.S. The senior Iranian security official says that Iran and Russia have managed to effectively change the regional security equation against the terrorists, citing the liberation of Aleppo and reaching a ceasefire deal. Shamkhani made the remarks in a meeting with senior Russian diplomat Alexander Lavrentiev. The Russian envoy said that Moscow and Tehran agree on most issues regarding Syria, and their cooperation has helped regional and global security.
The The flags flying here outside NATO's headquarters in Brussels now number 29. Montenegro's president promises joining the Western military alliance will come with huge benefits for his people.
With NATO membership, our future will be stable, secure and prosperous, and we will make decisions about the most important issues within the strongest, the most organized and most efficient alliance in the history of mankind.
Montenegro's accession is good for Montenegro, it's good for NATO, it's good for the stability of the Western Balkans, and it's good for international peace and security.
But that's not how the Kremlin sees it. Russian President Vladimir Putin claims a bigger, stronger NATO is simply a tool of U.S. foreign policy to keep Moscow in check.
We see development of NATO's military infrastructure, and that it's getting closer to our borders, and this concerns us.
But NATO generals say expanding and stationing troops close to Russia's borders is a necessary step to reassure Eastern European allies worried about possible Russian aggression.
With a Fox News alert right now, a terror attack outside the U.S. Embassy in Ukraine. While you were sleeping, an attacker throwing an explosive device over the compound's fence in Kiev. No one hurt. The suspect's not caught. We'll bring you more information as we get it.
This is the result of a massive cleanup operation carried out by the Philippine security forces. Ammunition, grenade launchers, and communications equipment, all discovered in one house. They're being drawn up in a list to be later used as evidence.
The Philippine government says it's obtained video showing local extremists conspiring with Islamic State militants to try to establish an enclave in the south of the country. The announcement comes as the country's military moves to crush an Islamist insurgency in the city of Marawi. The men you see in this video here are purportedly discussing tactics for besieging the city, including how to block roads as well as to capture schools and other key buildings. Officials say it indicates they worry that big plans were afoot for that area. Among the militants is an ISIL commander who's wanted not only by local authorities but also by the FBI.
More than 150 people were rescued on Saturday. ISIS fighters came knocking at his door. More gunfire can be heard. The Filipino military has admitted the fight is far harder than they'd expected.
On Chase Africa now, Kenyan authorities have warned the country could be facing a spate of copycat terror attacks. More than 30 people have been killed in recent weeks, most of them police officers. Authorities say Al-Shabaab fighters are responsible.
Westgate, Mandera, Garissa. Al-Shabaab's taken bloody revenge on Kenya after it sent soldiers into Somalia. Kenya's claimed some success in thwarting these attacks, thanks to an ongoing security crackdown. But in recent weeks, troubles flared up again. Dozens have been killed in bomb attacks in the northern eastern region bordering Somalia. Al-Shabaab's claimed some of the attacks. Authorities say the group has changed tactics, sending fighters over the border. Experts say loosely allied Kenyan jihadists are also involved.
Al-Shabaab has built local cells that have actually attracted our own Kenyan people who are now operating under the umbrella of Al-Shabaab but still living with us in Kenya.
Kenyan authorities fear what's happening overseas is likely to fuel the trouble in Kenya.
These images of a man dressed in a Mexican military uniform who appears to kill a civilian lying face down with a shot to the back of his head were captured by a street camera in central Mexico in May. The video prompted public outrage and condemnation.
We don't know who we have to be careful about. We have fake police, and now we are going to have a fake military.
According to the government, the man on the ground was suspected of stealing gasoline and part of a larger crime ring. Despite incidents like this, Mexican Senator Roberto Gil says the country must turn into its military to enforce domestic security, and he is one of the backers of a controversial law of internal security bill, which will grant policing power to soldiers.
7 years ago, my son was killed and disappeared. There's a law that permits soldiers to be in the streets committing crimes like my son's murder.
The role of the armed forces has been questioned in the cases of thousands of Mexicans who go mysteriously missing every year, including the infamous case of 43 students who disappeared in 2014 in Ayotzinapa. The law of internal security bill being pushed forward by the Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto's political party is currently in Congress, and it will be evaluated here at the Mexican legislature when a new session takes place in September.
A curfew has been imposed in the central Indian state of Madhya Pradesh after 5 farmers were killed during protests. The farmers were shot dead on June 6 in Mandsaur district while protesting crop prices, which they say are unfairly low. Gajendra Tokas of the National Farm Workers Union told Reuters, quote, police started firing to disperse the crowd. However, the state's Home Minister Bhupendra Singh denied the police killed the protesters. Singh said, quote, antisocial elements had fired their weapons instead. Farmers began staging large-scale protests last week in Madhya Pradesh and the neighboring state of Maharashtra, demanding debt relief and better prices for produce. Reuters says farmers dumped vegetables and milk on the streets and blocked highways so delivery trucks couldn't reach city markets. Al Jazeera reports more than 1,600 Indian farmers committed suicide in 2016 because of crop failure or accumulating debt.
Ariana Grande resumed her European tour in Paris on Wednesday. The 23-year-old had suspended the concert after the Manchester Arena bombing that killed 22 people and injured many others. In the hopes of keeping everyone safe, there was a heavy police presence surrounding Paris's Accor Hotel's arena. Prior to the event, traffic was blocked off. Security searched all bags entering the venue, and sniffer dogs checked people as well. Officials said that security measures had been at the highest level since Manchester.
Good morning and welcome back. A live look in London where the polls are open and voting is underway for the British general election.
That's right. Prime Minister Theresa May fighting a closer battle than expected in a decision that'll shape the future of U.S. relations with the UK.
This election was called early because the Conservatives were sure that they would win by a mile. But a few things have happened over the last couple of months which mean the chance of a far-left government here in the UK is far greater than ever before. Theresa May effectively inherited power from David Cameron after he resigned following that Brexit vote, and she said that she wants her own political capital moving ahead into those negotiations. But she has recently been accused of political U-turns, of failing to inspire the people, and as such has been called a right-wing Hillary Clinton. Frontrunner against her is left-leaning Jeremy Corbyn. He's socialist verging on Marxist, and he's been called the Bernie Sanders of the UK. He has said that he would never press the nuclear button. He wants to nationalise rail and water sectors. He wants to dramatically raise taxes and increase benefits. His own party held a vote of no confidence against him, but in a matter of weeks, he has been closing the gap. Recent attacks in London and Manchester have taken centre stage here, twice suspending the election campaigning. Corbyn has blamed the UK's foreign policy for attacks such as these, and he supports dialogue with the terrorists like the IRA and Hamas.
Nikki Haley's visit to Israel is making waves. Although the United States ambassador to the UN has been one of the strongest supporters of Israel in the Trump administration, she's now saying that her boss, United States President Donald Trump, sees a Jerusalem embassy move as part and parcel of an Israeli-Palestinian peace process. Her announcement that the United States is reviewing its participation in the UN Human Rights Council is also music to the ears of most Israelis. Haley's trips to the borders of the Hamas-controlled Gaza Strip in the south and Hezbollah-controlled Lebanon in the north are sending a strong message to the world about the nature of the U.S.-Israel relationship. Yesterday, she met with the Palestinian Prime Minister in Ramallah, although she did not meet with the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. For Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Haley's actions at the UN have proven her to be a strong friend of Israel, and he says she's standing up for Israel, for the truth, and for America.
President Donald Trump blocked some users on Twitter, and now they're lawyering up. This Twitter account operates as a designated public forum for First Amendment purposes, and accordingly, the viewpoint-based blocking of our clients is unconstitutional, reads a letter representing several Twitter users. Holly O'Reilly's one. She was blocked after tweeting this gif of the president meeting Pope Francis. Attorneys say blocking users suppresses speech since they can't interact with Trump anymore. Joseph Papp was also blocked. The Twitter users want to be unblocked. In the letter, they argue the government, quote, may not exclude people simply because it disagrees with them.
Today, the president named a replacement for Comey, and our chief White House correspondent, Major Garrett, tells us more about Christopher Wray.
The president told the world about his FBI pick on Twitter, calling Chris Wray a lawyer of, quote, impeccable credentials. In Cincinnati, Mr. Trump had few words about his choice.
He's going to be great.
Wray, 50, led the Justice Department's criminal division for 2 years under President George W. Bush. Much of his time was focused on corporate fraud prosecutions. The biggest? Jail time for top executives of bankrupt energy giant Enron. After leaving the Justice Department, Wray was a defense attorney, notably for New Jersey Governor Chris Christie in the so-called Bridgegate scandal. Wray lacks extensive background in terrorism and national security prosecutions, but is respected in the legal community. He is not well known among rank-and-file FBI agents.
Chris Wray is unflappable, from my experience.
Kent Alexander hired Wray when he was U.S. Attorney in Georgia.
I think the FBI could use a little less politics, and he is a very nonpartisan guy. I was a Clinton appointee as U.S. Attorney when I hired him. Chris is a Republican.
The Texas Attorney General leading a 16-state joint coalition that backs President Trump's travel ban and urging the Supreme Court to reinstate it, citing that blocking the ban prevents the federal government from enforcing effective national security and immigration policies. How did you get these states together, and what's the main issue that you want to get to the public here?
So, we started all the way back in the Ninth Circuit when this all began. We had just Texas, and then we also had a Fourth Circuit case. We had 13 states join us there, and then back in the Ninth Circuit, 15 states. So our argument is very simple. There is a statute that simply governs exactly what the president has done. The statute's been used, I believe, about 44 times. It's never been controversial, and it's on its face strictly gives the president the authority to limit entry of non-resident aliens if he views it as detrimental to the country.
Japan's shifting demographics have long made headlines. Its people are aging, and there aren't enough babies being born to create the next generations of workers and taxpayers. And while the nation is at the forefront of robotics and animation, it still can't plug the shortfall in human resources. The country is home to 127 million people. That figure is expected to drop to 88 million by 2065. But Japan is already suffering from labour pains. There are now 1.48 jobs for every applicant, the strongest demand for workers in more than 40 years. The government has been promoting domestic solutions to the shortfall. It's been encouraging the corporate sector to change the jobs on offer from contracts and part-time positions to permanent roles, and urging better pay. It's even looking at ways to entice people, particularly mothers and the elderly, to return to the workforce. In February, Japan had its first Premium Friday to encourage employers to send their employees home a few hours earlier than usual. But one option which the government appears reluctant to look at is immigration. Foreigners make up about 2% of the population. About 50,000 immigrants come to Japan each year. Most of them are students or guest workers. Many foreigners from places such as China and Indonesia are often in low-paying and temporary jobs, like taking care of the elderly. But there is a reluctance amongst politicians and many citizens to make that a permanent remedy to the shrinking labour pool. The onus is on a Japanese answer to a Japanese problem. But for how much longer can the nation ignore a potential solution to its looming demographic crisis?
Madrid just announced that it has banned manspreading. That thing where a person, often a man, opens his legs and takes up a bunch of unnecessary room in an enclosed space, across all of its public transit services. Specifically, the city's municipal transportation company, EMT, will be implementing new signage in all of the trains and buses, which will hope to dissuade manspreaders from spreading out in the presence of other riders. The sign features a stick man spreading his legs to cartoonishly large proportions on a public transportation seat, with a big red X and "Respect the space of others" text accompanying it.
We can confirm at least 8 people have died in South Africa, specifically near Cape Town, from a really bad storm that was just off the coast. It produced some unbelievable, coastal flooding. Look at the onshore wind that's coming in there, a lot of wind damage that was going on. There's a great example of the coastal flooding. This was basically kind of like a really bad nor'easter, except it happened in southern Africa on the coast. And the thing you have to remember about this part of the world, everything is kind of opposite, as it is in North America, of course. The storms spin clockwise. You've also got a difference in season. These guys are late fall and starting to get close to early winter right now. So there's your storm. Watch the center of it develop here. There it is, just offshore, and just an unbelievable amount of wind that was coming into Cape Town. The Weather Service was down there was actually saying that it was the worst storm they'd seen in 30 years. So, yeah, very bad storm. It was a deadly storm. We'll keep you updated with the situation there. Look at this. There's still actually a lot of snow on some of the mountains in the west. And, of course, it's only June. And, yeah, you do have some snow on the mountains this time of year. But this is actually a lot, even for this time of year. There are some spots where they've kind of closed up and then they'll reopen for the summer season, talking about ski resorts there. But a lot of spots where you can still do some skiing. Places like Mammoth Mountain, for instance. Here's the deal. We've got more snow that's coming over the next couple days. I know that sounds crazy. It's what, June 7th, and we're talking about snow. But you know, this is not going to be as widespread snow as it would have been with a storm system like this a couple of months ago, all right? So what will end up happening this time of year is that it's only the highest elevations that are going to get snow. You can see some of that blue color showing up there in parts of the Cascades, maybe at least northern parts of the Sierra. But through the weekend, there are some isolated spots in the high terrain that could see 5 to 8 inches of snow, maybe even more than that.
Scientists say it's happened before, and it's likely to happen again. We're talking about a large asteroid hitting Earth. Researchers from the Astronomical Institute of the Czech Academy of Sciences studied a recent meteor shower in which dozens of large meteors exploded in Earth's atmosphere. The shower happens about 4 times a year as the torrid meteor stream passes Earth. Scientists said in a June 5th press release they found a new branch of the torrid stream. Within that branch, they found at least 2 large asteroids up to 300 meters across. Earth encounters this newly discovered branch every few years, and its risk of impact with an asteroid that could cause serious damage reportedly continues to grow with each pass. Scientists also think the branch could be hiding massive space rocks several hundred meters in diameter. They say more research is needed to better understand the risk these asteroids pose.
Finally tonight here, America Strong, the newborn baby boy with big eyes, a big smile, and this was no ordinary birth. Here's ABC's David Wright.
17-year-old Kira reeling in pain, a first-time mother at the Philadelphia Zoo, and she's just gone into labor.
The keepers noticed that she did seem like she was very uncomfortable.
The zoo's chief veterinarian, Keith Hinshaw, says normally a western lowland gorilla gives birth in under an hour. Kira was having contractions for 24 hours. How many doctors does it take to deliver a bouncing baby gorilla? 17, it turns out. All there on call to deliver a 5-pound baby boy. The next morning,
she had no hesitation to pick him up and take care of him.
Mother and son now inseparable. David Wright, ABC News, New York.